This is the Chester County Real Estate Podcast, bringing you the info you need to make your next move a great one.
Hey everyone, welcome to the Chester County Real Estate Podcast. This is the show that gives you the information you need to make your next move a great one. I'm your host, Sean, and today I'm sitting down with Brian Castro, one of the owners of Virtual Vista Media. Brian, how you doing?
Great. How are you?
Good. So tell me a little bit about yourself and just briefly what Virtual Vista Media is.
Yeah. So I am a marketer, high level. We started. My father and I started Virtual Vista Media back in 2006, doing mainly just real estate photography and the old school 360-degree tours. Back when realtors were still putting listings in newspapers. So that tells you. You know, what we do now was very much in its infancy back then. And just over the years through, funny enough, I did grab my real estate license for a handful of years in the beginning. I figured, I have all these tools. Let me go get my real estate license. I did pretty well at that, but this business took off and I enjoyed doing this more and kind of would have been stupid to neglect that at that point.
Yeah, and that's where we crossed paths because for a little while we were in the same brokerage, but that must have been... How many? 10?
I got it. 12? My license right as everything tanked. Yeah.
I don't want to make it. I don't want to make us sound too old, but
I stopped counting at 25, man.
So, I do bring up like the early days and my early days when we were going through the initial kind of tail end of the bubble, going through the crash. Not because I think necessarily more years in the business automatically makes you better at what you makes a real estate agent better,
right?
But because you have a broader perspective of what the market's done, and also technology too, like you said, like going through that shift of understanding what, from newspapers to online, the rise of social media. And that's another thing. It's like, you've been doing marketing before social media was really a thing. I mean, we've had specifically before Twitter and before everyone was on Facebook.
Yeah.
And social media was still kind of like for the geeks, Yeah. I remember when I was at that brokerage and Twitter was just starting to get big, and it was weird trying to explain to agents how, like, yes, it's new and it's cool, not necessarily worth spending a lot of time and effort on, but a lot of that has changed. I don't know what your thoughts about Twitter, but social media, though, is now become, would you say, pretty... It
is no longer an option.
Exactly,
It is something that, you're either going to do it or you're not, but you're going to get left in the dust. It's no longer can maybe do it or not do it.
Right. So I wanted to talk a little bit about what homeowners can do, or what homeowners should be doing or having done to help sell their home faster.
Sure.
So if someone's looking to sell their house, marketing is a pretty big part of that.
Absolutely.
And we don't want to displace the role of the realtor in all of that, but a lot of what the realtor's doing is managing the people who are bringing that marketing to that house.
Yeah,
so
100%.
What are some of the activities that you think homeowners should be looking for when it comes to marketing their house for sale?
Yeah, absolutely. So I would say, first and foremost, listen to your realtor, because most of the time they're telling you the right things to do as far as like home prep. I think, photography is basically a standard at this point, and using other things like, video, virtual tours, all those things are great.
On that, it's like, back to, the reason why I bring up like that, like history and experience is I remember the days when an agent could go up to a homeowner and tell them, like, I do HD photography or, high resolution photography.
Right.
We use wide angle lenses, and that's going to be so much better. And a lot of agents were getting business just by going through expireds and being like, look, this photo stinks. I do professional photography. And what they're doing is calling someone like yourself. But now, I mean, that's pretty standard.
Yeah, no, it's definitely standard. I think, the wide angle lens, all that kind of stuff, that's all great. I think one of the things that we as a company do is, the way I describe our photos to people is they're accurate but polished. A lot of times that you'll have, the photographer will come out there, super wide angle, like to the point where it's not even the same house.
Yeah.
And they over edit it. They start looking like cartoons, all that. So it's like, accuracy is very important. But when it comes to the photography, like I said, listen to your realtor, because a lot of them are telling you to clean the place up and do all these little things. Just a few things we look for: trash cans out, make sure light bulbs work, clean your windows, pretty much pretend like you're having the president of the United States come over, and how would you want your house looking if that happened? Because you're actually, by not doing those things to prep the house, you're actually making your photos less valuable, because they're not, we're working with what we have to work with.
Right. Right.
So, at that point. And then past, the basics, right? You want to think about engagement, especially how you brought up social media, right? All the agents are, all of them have some form of social media, but even the ones without the big following still have the opportunity to advertise, right? So if they're going to be pushing your stuff out, but you want to make sure that your home's looking the best. And if you only have photos, you only have so much to work with, right? If I'm a buyer and I'm on Zillow or Realtor.com, I'm going to go in there. Okay, I saw your photos. I think it looks okay. Maybe I check it off as to, on a short list or whatever, but I'm moving on to the next one. But if now you add a video or you add a virtual tour, you're keeping that buyer engaged with your property longer. You're letting them see more. There's different, it's just keeping the buyer looking at your property longer gives you a better chance of, scheduling more showings.
Yeah. That's kind of a principle even here on the podcast where I tell people, like, hey, when someone's looking to hire a cleaner, they have a number of choices. But if they could spend 20 minutes and listen to your story and what you do and how your cleaning services is different, you become the obvious choice among everyone else. Sure. So the more time they can spend with you, the more they get to know you, the more time they can spend with the house, the more they get to know the house. It's like, well, those people are coming into your home, and it's almost like the second showing right off the bat, because they've already gone through and examined the floor plans, the walkthrough, the video, or whatever. So what are some of the things that you suggest that someone can do to increase that engagement?
So aside from stills, like I said, are standards. You have virtual tours. Now, back in the day, a virtual tour was just a 360, thing. You had to actually drag the mouse, spin it around. Now, you have things like Matterport, which I tell people it's the closest thing to being there in person without being there in person. It was huge during COVID because I never thought people were going to buy homes sight unseen the way they did, and it was unbelievable how many of those we did during that time. Now,
you guys, when you guys say you do Matterport, right? Like Matterport TM, the Matterport camera and platform and everything.
Yeah, absolutely.
I've talked to real estate photographers. I'm like, oh, do you guys, I like Matterport. Do you guys do Matterport? And they're like, yeah. We do something just like that.
Yep.
And I'm like, oh, do you do Matterport? They're like, yeah. We do like a Matterport-like thing. And I'm like, well, hold on a second. In my experience, it does cost it is more developed service than some of the other alternatives out there.
Sure.
But for me, it's like it's like you're playing a video game almost. The way you're able to walk through the house, it feels so much better. Just their software, their platform, their camera, everything.
It's the resolution is unbelievable. The accuracy is unbelievable. You also have a lot of bells and whistles, like the dollhouse view that you can zoom out and kind of see what floor you're on. There's actually a tool in there that they can measure a doorway to say, hey, would my couch fit through this doorway? And the measurements in this thing are accurate within 1%. So we actually, from a technical standpoint outside of real estate, this thing is capable of producing data. It records data that's good enough to do building plans from. So it's that accurate. And then you can, even if you have the 3D headsets, you can look at it through there, which is kind of neat.
Ones like Oculus things.
Yeah, not everybody's going to have it, but it is kind of neat that you can do that.
Yeah, and and honestly, if you look at the cost to like do it yourself, like getting Matterport camera and get the subscription, hiring someone to do it, it's dirt cheap.
Plus it's time consuming. The biggest home that I've ever done a Matterport in was 18,000 square feet. That's over a day's worth of scanning. Yeah. Just like, it's a lot. Right. There's no shortcuts with this product. That's why one of the main reasons the price is a little bit higher. But if you really want the bells and whistles and you want the fancy thing, right? That is there's no substitute for the quality that provides.
And it is silly, and I don't know, I'm a little bit of a fanboy. Maybe it's just like the tech side of me that really likes Matterport. But for like you said, for a while you had these, like, you would put, whether it was like a rotating camera or like a 360 camera, they would put them in different. They would put them in different rooms, or they would like stitch them together, and all it really was just being a photo that you could look. You could move around, then you go to the next room and you can look around, which really wasn't that. It's really not telling you anything more than what a regular 2D photo would tell you. It's just you can now see the floor. But the Matterport, it's like you're actually moving through the house.
Sure.
And in my opinion, that makes so much of a difference, because those old virtual tours, I just remember thinking they were useless.
The experience, but they're not dead. I think the way that older version of that type of tour, the 3D tour, they still have, like, we have a different version called the Zillow 3D home tour. Zillow decided to make their own baby with that, but it's similar to that. Like, it's not walking through. You still have to kind of navigate yourself a little bit to a point. But you are providing a lot of information to people with those type of tours. The Zillow home tour actually integrates within Zillow. So it's like actually shows up with the photos. There's not clicking to open a new pop-up window or anything like that. They've just added a feature recently where there's a floor plan within the tour. So when I'm in the kitchen, I can see on the floor plan where I'm actually located for that scan. So that's a cool new feature there. And then, as I mentioned to you before, there's also within the virtual tour space, there's also videos, right? And I would say, just to, briefly, the video is like a stylized version that the user doesn't have the ability to go through at their own pace. They're watching what you put together, and they look great, but there is a time and a place for the 3D over the video. So if you have a vacant property, there's nothing to draw your eye. There's nothing in the house, right? So unless it's very big and there's a lot of architectural features or things to look at, we don't usually recommend that for vacant properties. We usually recommend a 3D virtual tour, whether it's Matterport or the Zillow, because at least they can go through and they can explore the property and see what it has to offer. Now, if it's a furnished home, it can come down to a preference thing. The video, the Zillow, or the Matterport will all do the job there. But in a vacant home, if people are listening, it's better to have a 3D version of a tour.
Now, when you say video, one thing that I've noticed is that I feel like there's a difference between a real estate videographer and just a regular videographer, So, and a lot of it's also in cost too. And I know you do both, but I think when people hear video, they're thinking, oh, I need to hire a videographer. And when they start talking to people, they find out videographer could cost like $2,000 to $4,000 a day or per project or so. Real estate videography is nowhere near that. And I attribute that to when you have someone who's used to going in and out of houses, several times a day. They know exactly what they're looking for. And even when you did a video for me, I remember thinking like, oh, you done? I would have taken all day to do that. So what are some of the differences between a real estate video, which make it way more within reach than if you just called up a videographer who went to art school or film school or something like that?
Yeah, I think in the realm of real estate marketing services, where the video would fall, we have to make it feasible to be in the realm of affordability and just be practical. We have to systematize the process, right? So we know that we want to get certain shots. There's certain things that, like, it's not much of a video clip, so that we might leave that out, right? So like sometimes a powder room that's super tiny, like if somebody asks for it, sure, we'll throw it in there, but like that's not really it's kind of dull, and especially with people's attention spans, right? You just want to have the hard hitting clips,
right?
So a lot of times we try to focus on natural movements. We've seen videos out there where it looks like people are just holding the camera and it's like they're swinging around a lightsaber, like, hey, look at this, look at this, look at this, and But we try to do natural movements where we're moving forward,
Yeah.
actually giving them the experience of walking across the threshold
Yeah.
into the home or into a room.
Which is one thing I loved and why I keep telling people to, you're the guy for video, because when I look at a lot of these other home tours, the temptation is to put the camera on the tripod and start pivoting it.
Yeah.
And what happens then, and people, this might be a little hard to grasp, but you're actually creating a 2D image when you're on one fixed point and you're just panning.
Right.
When you're watching that video pan, you're not seeing any kind of depth or parallax or anything with foreground or background.
Sure.
When you're actually moving forward, you're starting to see things kind of shift a little bit, giving the illusion, because it's all 2D, but you kind of get an idea of the space around you.
One of the things that we like to do to enhance that is we turn on the ceiling fans.
Yeah.
So because we're actually, the footage that we take in person, we're actually slowing that down. So having the ceiling fan on and just having that slow, buttery motion, like you're going in the room and the ceiling.
Yeah.
It definitely, you're not looking at a photo at that point.
Right.
And it's a nice touch. Sometimes if you'll have they'll have like a porch swing. Mm-hmm. We'll rock that and then we'll film that in motion, or like a pinwheel or something in the backyard, or if they have water features by the pool, get some of that water in motion. Yeah, a lot of things like that.
But when you're doing the video, you're not using a tripod.
No.
So the technology and stuff has come to the point where you're like, so what are you using as you're going through the house?
So it's called a gimbal. Mm-hmm. I think a lot of people, they make them for phones now. So a lot of people, I think, are familiar with the technology. It's the same technology that's on a drone that keeps it steady when you're flying around there, just a handheld version, right? But it's not as easy. Like if I were to give an amateur the gimbal and my camera and they're going to walk, it's still going to be bouncy and shaky.
Yeah.
You almost have to do a goofy walk. It's like a heel to toe motion, knees bent. There's definitely technique to it. It's not to really get that super smooth gliding motion.
Yeah.
And I think that's one thing that we're very good at. I think a lot of people, all real people who do what we do are not created equal. A lot of them figure out how to use a camera just good enough to charge people money. And we're very focused. Like I always say, we give people way more than they pay for. I tell, the one thing for homeowners is does the realtor you're going to hire actually know the person who's doing the marketing, or are they just calling a dispatch and say, hey, I need a photographer, and it could be a different person every time? We actually build relationships with the realtors, and because of my experience in real estate, I was able to apply a lot of that. Like I know what it's like on the realtor's end of things, so we were able to very much tailor what we do to the realtor's needs, to what's best for all these properties. We've seen all the technology. We adapt, as things change, but also we weed out the junk. Like you said, there's a lot of wannabe Matterport tours and things like that, and they're all not as, not. We've looked at some of them because if they're, we want to provide our clients and the home sellers options, but if it's not as good or it's not worth doing, we don't offer it. But we offer everything under the sun, as far as tools for marketing.
Okay, cool. So outside of the actual creating the materials and the media, what are you guys doing on the marketing, advertising, social media end? Or what would you recommend as far as using social media to get those photos, videos, tours, and stuff out?
Right, sure. So some things we do with our realtors is we'll help them run ads on social media, right? But we also, in those cases where they're willing to do it, try to have them incorporated into the ad, because as a homeowner, your realtor is going to be you want them to have the opportunity to manage what's coming in the door. Yeah. Right. So if the potential buyers can see whose listing it is, it gives them hey, I'm going to call this person. Right. So then your realtor gets the contact and has an opportunity to take them, hopefully over the finish line for you.
Well, I take it, I look at I use it as the example of a open house, right? Sure. So it's great if you have an open house and you just have 50 people going through there and they're just looking at the house and maybe someone's making a decision to make an offer. If the realtor is doing their job, they're getting the contact information of everyone that's coming in that house. First of all, there's a safety issue there. But on the other hand, too, it's like you want to be able to follow up with them. Sure. And find out what it is that they liked, they didn't like. That's important feedback, and also make sure you can correct any misconceptions that they had.
Right.
So when someone's looking at a house or looking at a listing online, even if they have all the information, you still want to engage that person, or as an agent would still want to engage that person because maybe there was something they were missing, or they had a question that they didn't think they would, the owner or the agent would be able to answer. It's way better to have people that you can kind of be in touch with that 100%. Are engaging with you than people who are just flipping through the photos on a home search or something like that.
I mean, they're going to do that anyway, but yes, you want to be able to grab and get hands on or voice on with them as fast as possible. So, running ads is one thing. But it's really like we create all the marketing collateral, then it's like, what do you do with it afterwards, right? Where are you putting it? Sometimes it's creating landing pages that they can put on the signs that we actually have with QR codes. Another thing that got, it's been around for how long, a QR code? But
oh my gosh.
COVID really made it a thing. It wasn't a thing the way it is now until COVID happened.
The QR codes came out, and then they were starting to die, and I was glad because
I didn't like them in the beginning either.
I hated QR codes, but it was also because no one knew what they were or how to use them. But there were all these like marketing companies that were like, "I'm going to put a QR code on your website," and I would be like,
the public didn't know what it was.
The point was to. And neither did the marketing companies. Right. I'm like, the point is to bring them to your website. Why would you put a QR code on your website? Yep. And it was so frustrating because it was such a shiny object. However, then COVID came. Yep. And now every phone has, like, you don't even have to break out an app. You just literally open up your camera and it will say, oh, you're trying to scan a QR code.
Sure.
So people understand it a little bit more. And now you can actually integrate it with your marketing and it makes sense.
Yeah, 100%.
Say. What would you say is one of the things that you think agents are ignoring that they really should be looking at when it comes to marketing a house that possibly someone who's looking to sell should be looking into?
Yeah, so I think they're missing some opportunities when it comes to being a little more hands-on. And I understand there's some big teams, that they've kind of built a machine.
Yeah.
But there's still this so one specific person on that team might not be doing all of these things, but somebody's still doing them, right? So it's the opportunity to capture content, right? Whether it's you sticking the sign in the lawn, doing, highlighting little things with short videos for social media, because the bigger you build it's twofold. If you do a good job of building your social media, right, you're helping your own business as the realtor, but you're also providing a more powerful tool that you can put to use for your sellers. And I think they're just, there's this set it and forget it, mentality with a lot of them. And I think that it's really, you can't do it anymore. I think right now, there's a lot of people who you either have to shift or I think the current market we're in, I think, is definitely going to separate the weak from the strong. I mean, there's people, the more recent agents haven't seen a market like this. The older agents, they're struggling because technology keeps plowing ahead. But I think they really need to embrace the opportunities they have when they are working with their clients.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, that makes a ton of sense. So Brian, what's the best way that someone can get a hold of you?
Yeah, so www.virtualvista.net. We're on social media at Virtual Vista Photo and Virtual Vista Real Estate Marketing on Facebook. And I think we're working on a TikTok right now, getting one of those started. But yeah, so yeah, you can Google us. We're pretty Googleable.
Awesome, cool. Well, thanks a lot, man. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate it.
Thanks for listening. This has been the Chester County Real Estate Podcast, brought to you by RE/MAX Ace Realty, serving buyers and sellers in the Chester County area. Subscribe for new episodes at acerealtypa.com/podcast. And you can find us on Facebook, YouTube, and wherever podcasts are found.